Good day, two-wheeled dudes and dudettes, and welcome to the Canary Islands. It's Grand Canary, about 100 miles off the coast of southern Morocco, yes, off the coast of Africa in the Atlantic here. And I've come here to ride Ducati's new Multistrada 1260. So that's your 1262cc twin, taken largely from the XDiavel and plunked into the Multistrada. Some other updates as well, a little more rake, some suspension stuff, seat stuff, some dash stuff. So we'll talk about all that stuff as we ride down this wicked coastline. I'll try and tell you guys what I've learned and hopefully answer some questions that you have about the Multi 1260. Shall we? Yep. Okay, team, here we go. Oh, a crowd of locals excited about these motorcycles. Got a raft of Germans ahead of me. You're wondering who they are. German moto journos. They're probably pretty cool, except I can't understand what they're saying. More my fault than theirs, I guess. So because we're in an urban area, we can hold down this button here, we can enter this menu, and we can put it in urban setting. And when you do that, a whole bunch of stuff happens. The suspension gets really soft. Damping loosens up. Remember, this has the Skyhook adaptive or semi-active suspension. So now it's really like kind of cushy and soggy and soft, like a 80s Cadillac, which is nice for the city. And the dash changes a little bit. So now the clock's really big here, and the speedo's pretty big. Check traffic. And the throttle map mellows out too. And it makes the bike a little bit easier to ride around an urban area. It's actually one of my favorite things about the Multistrada. It's been like this for a number of years now. I have these ride modes that all sort of coincide, the throttle map with the suspension, and it makes a difference. It really does. It changes the personality of the bike in a significant way. And it's good. Fine engineering. Clutchless shifting on the Multistrada, so first, second, third, gold wing. Good for you. And then back down to second. It's got the auto blip downshift thing, which is pretty cool. So now the road is getting a little bit twistier. Oh, quite a bit twistier. So I'm going to go into the old settings here. I'm going to punch it in sport. Close the throttle. Now the suspension is going to stiffen up. Throttle is going to get much more responsive, more power on tap. And just like that, we are climbing out of here on a pretty wicked road. And what we just did by riding around in a city, using the urban mode, and then coming up into the hills here and carving our way out of town and popping the bike into sport mode and then getting this spicy engine is exactly what the Multistrada is all about. That's the whole point. The whole idea is it's supposed to be 4 bikes in one. It's supposed to be a sport bike, a touring bike, a city bike, and a dirt bike. And yeah, it's not a dirt bike. We all know that. But it really does do the other things pretty well. It's a decent sport bike. It's a pretty good city bike, and it's a great touring bike. Check out this road. Holy moly. This is wicked. Now, some of the chassis changes that happened. The Multi 1260 has more rake, so the fork is pushed out from the steering head. A little bit more rake, more trail, which historically is done to make bikes more stable. And the sacrifice is it's a little bit less agile. It doesn't tip in as quickly, it doesn't change direction as quickly. But Ducati's feeling was that the previous Multistrada was, if anything, too agile. So they figured they'd make it a little bit more stable, especially at high speed, and they would still have a plenty sporty bike. And I would have to admit that they did that. I don't prefer this, though, to the previous Multi. I still like the way the old bike felt. I really liked how direct and quick it was to steer. This bike is, by all accounts, really easy to ride. I hope that's obvious right now. This is a really twisty technical road. and yet I'm barely pushing on the bars. I'm barely putting any effort into riding the bike. It's super easy, which is all well and good, but I really thought that the super agile, sort of borderline twitchy attitude that the previous Multistrada had was part of its personality. It was something that, I don't know, it made it different than other bikes. It's a Dacia Sandero. It's that was James May's fetish car from Top Gear, right? I'm gonna have to pass it though. Yeah, you can back it in. We didn't sort of like early in the episode to talk about that, but yep, you can back it in. I turned ABS to front only, and there you go. You can hoon around on a mountain road like this. Whoa, that's a little sketchy. Careful there. And I love that about Ducatis. I love that about the Multistrada, that no matter how kind of like sensible and mature Ducati tries to make a bike, they kind of can't help themselves. You can always turn ABS off and back it into a corner like a supermoto, even though you're riding a freaking $20-something thousand touring bike, basically. It's kind of awesome. So Ducati claims, I believe, 6 more horsepower out of this basically XDiavel engine with a slight displacement bump. 64 cc's, I think, bigger than the old 1198 Multi 1200 engine. With the bigger displacement, you get a little bit more power, like I said, and more torque, as well as just a broader spread of torque. But another thing that Ducati did with this bike is they made the swing arm quite a bit longer, almost 2 inches longer than the 1200. And what that means is it doesn't necessarily feel faster. It still accelerates really quickly, but then again, so did the 1200. It's less wheelie prone, this bike. It's just sort of like less apt to wheelie because the wheelbase is I think more than 2 inches longer than the old bike, which is significant. It's not nothing. That's where we left from, way down there. See that little village down there with the ferry boat waiting to leave? That's where we took off from a few minutes ago there. Pretty wicked. And that off in the distance, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to turn my head and try and watch the road at the same time, but that's Tenerife over there. Another Canary Island. I'm going to try and focus. Get past this Hyundai. So anyhow, more rake, more trail, a longer swing arm. The bike has gotten bigger, basically. It's gotten longer. The idea is that it gets more stable, and it gets a bigger engine. So basically it's just growing, the Multistrada, and it didn't really need to grow. It was already a pretty big bike. But, you know, I'm sure Ducati doesn't do this stuff without some semblance of an idea of what their customers want. So I'm sure that these bikes are used a great deal for touring missions, and touring bikes are big. Still pretty fun on a twisty road, I have to say. Wow. You really don't want to make a mistake on this road, that's for sure. You want to keep it at maybe 75-80% of your riding ability or riding speed, whatever. Good stuff, Multistrada. Yeah. And it blows me away. This thing's got like a 63-inch wheelbase and a better part of a 1300cc engine, and it just like, it still acts like a little supermoto if you ask it to. It cracks me up. Now, the riding position in general on the Multistrada is very upright, very relaxed. It's a really comfortable bike to ride all day, for many days, if that's what you want to do. Kind of always has been. And it also encourages you to kind of sit in the middle of the bike, and you know, you don't really need to move your upper body that much when you ride this bike. You certainly don't need to move your butt on the seat. You can just kind of like plunk yourself in the middle of the saddle and just flick it from side to side. You get a huge wide handlebar and great leverage.
and decent chassis geometry, even with the changes that they've made. So it's just a relaxing bike to ride in general. I think it's significantly less relaxed to ride if you put it in sport throttle mode, or whatever it is, high engine mode. I think it's high, medium, and low. High engine mode is full power and very direct throttle response, a little too direct in my opinion. The medium throttle map, which is standard for the touring mode, is full power but a little bit gentler delivery of power, which I think is the sweet spot. And then there's a low power mode, which you can use in the urban setting if you want to, which is less than maximum power, and it's a very gentle power delivery. But in any case, I like that there are options on the Multistrada, and I like that Ducati allows you to change everything. So basically, the 4 riding modes that they have set into the bike, sport and touring and urban and enduro, are basically just suggestions. They're basically just names that you can customize however you please, which I think is pretty cool. That's a good way to do it. So they give you basically suggestions, and if you want to do it differently, you can. Oof, that's a big vehicle coming the other way. So when I had a Multi 1200 as a long-term bike, as an assignment for Motorcyclist magazine, I had all the ride modes set up the way I wanted to, and it was great. I could just flick into whichever mode I wanted to. All right, tonneau. Eat, eat. Okay, out onto the motorway now. We can test some of this bike's touring chops. Sink into this tunnel now. You notice the dash changed. It's like a night setting. Lots of dashes do that nowadays, and it's pretty nifty, I think. I think it's a cool feature. When we go back out into the sunlight, it'll change back to day mode. You can also do it manually if you want to. If you just prefer the black background all the time, you can tell it to do that, or vice versa. So here we are, 5th gear, not even in top gear yet, 60, 65 miles an hour. And the Multistrada will do this all day long for as many days as you can tolerate. Yeah, real comfortable bike. Good wind protection, not totally complete at someone my size, 6'2". I still get wind on my shoulders and such, but you can also adjust it if you want to with this pretty brilliant pinch and slide windscreen, they call it. Yeah, you can set it at any point you want and just let go, and it stays there. It's one of the better windshield adjustment systems on the market today, if you ask me. Electric ones are cool, but for a manual one that you do with your hand, this is so easy and so convenient. Holy Moses, this is a long tunnel. I'm starting to wonder if we're ever going to come out of this thing. Oops. My bad. Here we go. The dash changed back now. There we go. White background. The mirrors on the Multi are also pretty good. Perhaps the best Ducati mirrors that exist on the market. So, you know, if you watch MC Commute, you know I like mirrors, and these ones are pretty good. And I also like the gearing on this bike. I've mentioned it before. I've mentioned Ducati's being pretty good about gearing, and yeah, they like to let their bikes lug. We're going 70 and we're pulling 3,700 RPM or something. So this engine's just chugging along. This is one of the things that the Ducati Multistrada is best at, oddly. It's really touted for being a sport bike lover's touring bike, you know, because it's agile and it'll tear up a twisty road. But the truth is, this is where the bike is surprisingly good. All right, well, I think we've covered a lot of the basics about the Multistrada 1260. We rode it on a twisty road, we rode it on a little town, we rode it on a freeway. Yeah, the bike does pretty much everything you'd want it to do, and it damn well should, because this is the S model, which is the slightly up-spec one from the base. You get a gaggle of features with this bike that you don't get with the base bike, like the TFT dash, and the adaptive suspension, the Skyhook suspension, and a few other things. And it's $22,395, so we'll call it $22,400, I guess. And over $22,000 is no joke for a motorcycle. Can we agree? That's pretty expensive. So when I ride the Multistrada 1260, I say to myself, it does everything really, really well. And then I think, yeah, it really should. It really should do everything really well, considering it's more than $22,000. If you're a consumer and you're going to buy a bike and you're going to spend on the north side of 20 grand, you really shouldn't be giving up much. You should be getting exactly what you want for that money. And you can dislike the way that the Multistrada looks, you can dislike the way that it sounds, maybe it's not comfortable for your body type, maybe it's too big. Those are all fair complaints if that's who you are. But sort of objectively, and what the bike was designed to do and what it delivers, it's pretty darn close to the ideal sport touring bike. It's got that Ducati crackle and grumble and clatter of the engine. It's got state-of-the-art suspension, it's got a color dash, it's got heated grips, it's got cruise control. I forgot to use the cruise control on the freeway, damn it. Yeah, it's got, you know, pretty much every option under the sun, and it really should for this money. Since we're at the end of our ride, I guess we just need to find a place to talk this bad Melberg over. Oh, excuse me, sorry. This looks like as good a spot as any, right? Just a random parking lot with some dumpsters in it. Get some sunshine on this sucker. Plop it on the center stand. And have a look-see. There it is. Multi 1260. Looks pretty similar to the way it always has, or since 2010 or whatever. These big honking nostrils, a little cooler behind there, and this aftermarket radiator guard that's put on there so that jackwagon journos like me and those Germans don't pop a hole in the radiator with a stone or something. Sounds a little blocked by the luggage, but get the idea. Yeah. And then I can give you a quick rundown of the dash and who's it. So main screen here, and like I said, it changes a little bit. We're in enduro mode now. When we were in urban before, it went to the clock being major and the tach going away, because who cares what your RPM is when you're riding around the city there. If you go to sport, you get a more prominent tachometer. Yeah, along left here you got your trip meters, average speed, consumption, air temp. It's a nice 71 degrees. If you hold down the mode/enter button, you enter this menu here where you can select your ride mode like we did when we were riding. If you tap menu, you can go into riding modes, and you can go into sport, say, and adjust all of these parameters, which is pretty wild. Suspension, quick shifter, wheelie control, ABS, Ducati traction control, engine map. And when you go into each one of these things, you get a little breakdown of what you're getting. So instead of just saying you put traction control on 3 or 7 or whatever, you get these little parameters. So they say this is road setting for performance, DTC3. You go to 4, and it edges towards safe and stable. And by the time you get up to TC level 7, it says suggest that for wet performance. TC8, wet, safe and stable, right? Makes sense? So they're basically giving a guidance for people who don't want to have to learn or find out what the modes mean for themselves. They give you guidance on each individual one. Same thing for ABS, wheelie control, and the lot. So it's lots and lots of tunability and options in the menu, and it's laid out a little bit differently than it was before, and I think they did a better job. What else? Any other little Easter eggs? I don't think so. This is the on-off switch here. But if you remember the old Multi, a couple generations ago, it had a big button here. They said they've improved the keyless system. The old button is under here, which I guess is a fail-safe maybe, if for some reason the switch stops working or something. Yeah. Anywho, there you have it. That's a Multistrada 1260. This is the Canary Islands. I'm Zach, and I'll see you next time, I guess. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. and ask questions below, and check out the links in the description of the video for more information on the bike, photos, the story I've written, and a small list of specs. Thanks again for hanging out. We'll see you guys next time. All right. We stopped to get gas, and there's a freaking rad little bike over here. I'm gonna go check it out. You guys want to come? It's a Honda 70. This dude's just romping around on this thing. That is pretty freaking wicked, man. It's really cool, man. Very, very cool. Oh, he wants me to listen to it. Yeah? Okay. He's proud of his pipe. Let's hear it. Yeah. He's stoked on it. I love how stoked he is. Sick. Nice job. Man, that sucker is cherry. Oh, almost got hit by a minivan. Probably not the first or last time I'll do that in my life, looking at a motorcycle.